Welcome to the Dadical Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stoker. On today's episode, we're going to hear from a dad who's willing to admit that fatherhood isn't always rainbows and butterflies. Most men, when they go through something devastating, put on a mask. They push things down and tell themselves they've dealt with it, and they simply grit their teeth and keep trying to move forward. My guest today did exactly that, and for 6 years, it cost him more than he realized. This is Taz Harding, giving us one of the most honest and vulnerable conversations about grief, marriage, and fatherhood that I've ever had. Here's Taz. All right, Taz. Hey, welcome to the Dadical Podcast. Really excited to have you today. And really, we'd love to just get to know you first, get to know your family, your background. Go ahead and give us an introduction to the Taz Harding family.
Well, I'm excited to be on the podcast with you today, Seth. I know we've known each other for, how long have we known each other? What, 5-6 years, maybe even more than that?
8?
8 years. Oh, man, yeah, it has been 8 years. I wish I haven't, but yeah. So a little bit more about me. I'm 31 years old. My wife
just a pup.
Yeah. My wife and I have been married for going on 8 years. In January will be 8 years, and we have 3 little boys actually. So we have a 5-year-old, we have a 2.5-year-old, and we have a 4-month-old. So we're still in that new baby phase, not sleeping as much. I'm sleeping, obviously, but my wife not sleeping.
Three boys. That's absolute chaos.
Oh yeah, it really is. It really is. But I can't remember. Do you have brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and a sister.
So the boys, I grew up with 4 brothers. All right, so there's 5 boys in my family. So having 3 boys is like normal for me. But raising them is completely different than having brothers. Like when I was growing up, having brothers, we just punch each other and we get over it, you know. But with kids, I just can't punch them. So you gotta talk with them. You gotta make sure their emotions are taken care of. They're young, but they are, and we'll talk about this more. But they are literally the highlight of every single day that I have. But a little bit more about me. I'm from LA originally. Lived there for 20 years. I'm LDS. I served a mission in the Caribbean, so lived there for a couple of years as well. And then came home, played some basketball for a couple of colleges, and then moved up to Utah for one of those, and then just never left. Met my wife. Now we have 3 kids and a mortgage that's making me stay here. So that's a little bit about me.
Very nice. And I always brag that I'm one of the few people who are able to lock Taz up on the basketball court, but that's probably a different podcast episode.
Oh, yeah. Ouch. You know what, though? Just to give a compliment to you, Seth, you are actually a pretty good ball player. Even though we haven't played in years, I remember you. You're good. You're good.
I'm old now, man. I move a lot slower than I used to. But with Taz and I have had some fun battles on the basketball court. Taz, I thanks for introducing us to your family. And obviously, with 3 kids under the age of 5, things I imagine are a little hectic right now as a dad. But you know what? There's seasons to fatherhood, right? And it's funny how, me now with kids who are all significantly older, I look back and I think about how hectic it felt at the time, but also how amazing it was to be able to see your kids grow and learn and kind of get their little personalities and things like that. And it's a fun season, even though it's a crazy season, it's a fun season that you're in. But I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. Let's back up a little bit though. I'd love to learn more about how you were raised, your relationship with your dad and your parents, and maybe how some of those things played into the father that you became.
Yeah. What do you want to know specifically?
Let's start with you mentioned you said 4 brothers?
Yeah.
No sisters?
No sisters. Nope.
Okay. So what was that household like growing up, and tell me about your relationship with your dad.
We grew up in a, as you could expect with 4 boys, just absolute chaos. Every brother that I had played multiple sports multiple times of the year. And when I think back to my family, I think of 2 things when I'm growing up. I think of all the sports that we played. And then I think of all the activities that we did. Sorry, 3 things. All the sports we played, all the activities we did outside of sports, and we'll talk about those. And then I think about church. Actually, those are the 3 things when I look back at my childhood that were just the highlights and the things that really defined us. and I'll kind of dive into it, but everyone played multiple sports. In high school, I played football, basketball, volleyball. And most of my brothers were along those same lines: football, basketball, baseball, volleyball. We all played kind of similar sports. So growing up, it was really fun. Where when I was, when I was 6, 7 years old, 8 years old, I'm watching my oldest brother play varsity football, going under the lights, and I remember for over a decade, we had somebody playing under the lights Friday night football, and going and supporting my brothers every single game. Like that was some of the highlights of my week when I was younger, was just going and supporting my family and supporting my brothers, even if they didn't play a lot, supporting the team that they played for. So that was a highlight, and something that really defined me. And I think secondly to that too, all the activities you did were Boy Scouts. So we're all Eagle Scouts. And so constantly camping, constantly, going shooting, we're throwing knives, we're canoeing, we're going on crazy trips and backpacking and things like that. And then church too. I mean, we were all active. We all went to church every single week. Not always to our choice sometimes, but our parents raised us right where they raised us what they would prefer us to do, and then we kind of make our decisions from there, right? And I say all that to say that, and I'm kind of an emotional guy, so if I start breaking down a little bit, I apologize. My wife always says she likes it, but I kind of hate it. My dad was always there. Every activity. Not to say that my mom wasn't. I know this is kind of the Dadical podcast. My mom was always there too. But my dad was on every outing, every camp out that we went to, every activity that I went to, every game that I had, even like half of the practices. I swear he was there sometimes, like showing up at the end after work, coming dressed up in his collar. There at every activity. He was a leader in church activities for me. So he was always someone that I really looked up to. But I think back and I say my dad, one thing that about him, he was always there and always present in everything that we did.
So clearly that's important to you. What impact did that have on you?
Well, I think I always was able to share those moments with him. If you think maybe on the opposite side of the spectrum, when you have a dad, and it's okay if your dad's not at everything. My dad was like really present in every activity. Emotionally, that's a whole nother story. He always jokes about like how he has like zero emotions. He just likes to have fun. But but if you think of the other side of the spectrum where like a dad isn't there, right? And that was true for some of the boys that we went on, campouts with, or like kids that didn't have their dads coming to their games or tournaments or whatever it may be. I go home after those campouts and we just reminisce with him. We tell my mom all the stories. We tell my brothers all the crazy things that happened and all the fun times that happened and the scary things that happened and all that. And those memories, like they live on forever. And having somebody to share that with and to reminisce with and to have that connection with is like something that you can kind of never replace. And so when I think in terms of my own kids, and we'll probably get into this more, like that's something that that really impacted me, that I want to make sure I do with my children as well.
It's pretty clear that having a father present in your life has a big impact. I guess I want to dig deeper a little bit into that, because obviously it was special to you that he was always there, that you had that support and that presence in your life. But why do you think it makes such a difference to have a dad in your life like
that? The first thing that comes to my mind is the word alone, because I feel like as I and sorry if you can hear kids in the background, they're just running crazy. I don't know if you can or not.
I can. It's all good.
Okay. They're just crazy. Um, my 2-year-old's learning to talk, so it's all he's just like blurting out everything, right? But going back to your question, I think the word alone comes to mind. And I think that comes to mind because, as someone that might not have a father that's either as present as they want them to be, I think you just start to feel alone. You don't have someone to share moments and memories with. And if you look back at your childhood and you don't have any memories, moments, whether, scary, happy, sad, emotional, going through something, whatever it may be, like I feel like you kind of start to be alone and you feel like nobody sees you, or that person that you probably, I'm a male, he's male, that male father figure, you feel like no one, you feel like they don't see you. And if that one of the most important people in your life doesn't see you, you start to feel alone. And it's actually a lesson I've learned a lot recently, a lot. So maybe we can
What
dive
do you
into
mean?
that. I went on this men's retreat a couple of weeks ago, about 2 months ago, and it was with Chandler Hendry, and I don't know if you know that name. He actually just recently passed away last week.
I do.
Which has just been a heartbreaker for me, to be honest. Because Chandler is such an inspiration to me, another male inspiration. But we went on a men's retreat with him, and he put this thing on, his first one, and unfortunately his only one, and hopefully we can help live that on. But the whole purpose of that retreat was this idea of a mask, that especially men, and just people in general, especially men, we put on a front, we put on a mask, essentially hiding what's going on emotionally, mentally, spiritually. We don't show people what's going on. And when we don't do that, we keep the best part of ourselves from the people we love the most a lot. So for my wife, for example, right? If I'm not opening up to my wife, I'm not letting her see what's going on in my mind, in my heart, in my life, I don't feel seen. And so when we bring that back to and feeling seen makes you feel like you're connected with your wife. You have a special connection beyond just the wedding ring and maybe some kids. That you are each other's best friends. You are each other's rocks. You're each other's motivations. And when you bring that back to the aspect of having a father figure that is present and versus non-present, you don't have that connection anymore, and you start to feel alone. You start doing life alone. With your wife, if you're not letting her in, you're doing your life alone. You're essentially living a separated life. And it's sad because you start to go through trials by yourself. You start making mistakes, and that shame and that guilt creeps into your life, and nobody even knows about it. And you start to feel so alone and depressed and anxious. And why am I here?
So thanks for sharing that experience. I think it's still, even though it seems like it's coming up more and more now, and I think people are realizing the male loneliness challenge or epidemic that I think is maybe being acknowledged more and more these days. You don't hear a lot of people actually open up about it, and it sounds like you really needed that connection.
100%.
Let's go back to your dad. I love how present he was in your life, and you could see like he rushed over after work and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's really amazing, and I can see how that can have a big impact on you. What did he teach you?
He taught me how not to shoot a basketball. My dad's not the best shooter, so I'd say that's probably one. I'm just kidding.
Dang, I thought I taught you that, man.
He was not a 3-point shooter. He's not a 3-point shooter. By example, he taught me how to shoot a basketball, but he was not the great example of shooting a basketball. Hopefully he hears that and says, what? One example really sticks out to me. Following promptings, following feelings. And if you want to take this back to a spiritual level, right? Following the spirit for me, right? But following that gut feeling that you have is one thing that has stuck with me throughout the years. And I'll kind of share an experience if that's okay.
Please.
Man, how old was I? I think I was maybe 16 or 17 years old. And then my little brother was probably 14 or so. We went on this river rafting trip up in Northern California. I think it was on the American Fork River. I think that's what it's called. Long time. And it was an amazing experience. My dad was obviously there. We called it a high adventure trip. We went with our scout troop. We went with our scout troop every year on like a 3 to 5 day high adventure trip. We went places like Zion's. We went river rafting. We went all over. And this year we went river rafting, and we have everywhere from 12 to 18-year-olds there. Just kind of the young men that are in like our ward or our church, but is in our scout group as well. And my dad came, and we were on the river the first day, and man, it was just an absolute blast. You know, having my dad next to me, having my brother in the raft next to me, and we were able to hang out and just have a good time with 25 other boys. It was just an amazing experience just in and of itself. But the second day we were actually getting on a raft. We're getting on the raft for the day. We just had breakfast. We just cleaned up, and we were deciding like who goes in each other's raft, right? And I have my older brother there and my dad, and I go up to him because he was for most of the day before I think he was in my younger brother's raft, which is explainable. He's younger. He wants to make sure he's safe, right? Take care of him. And I'm older. I'm definitely wiser, not less mature at all. And I go up to him and I go, like, Dad, do you want to come into my raft today? And I could see on his face that something was like stirring with inside of him. And at that exact same moment, I got the same feeling. That like, why did you ask that question? Like, don't ask that question. Let your dad go with your brother. And I could see it physically, like he felt that too. And I just let it go. I didn't be like, oh, Dad, like, please come. I want you to come into my raft, right? So I could tell that we both had that feeling. And later when we were going on this going down the river, amazing time, amazing weather, really cool rapids. There's this one rapid that's like really small. And I think this is a metaphor for life that maybe we could dive into. But the raft was pretty small. The rapid was pretty small. And the guide goes, hey, like, who wants to be what we call our bow princess? This one's like super small. You can just hold on to the side. You don't need to be strapped in or anything. Like, just have your feet just hang over. You'll be okay. And my brother raises his hand like, oh, I want to be the bow princess. And so that she allows him to do it. He goes on the front of the raft. But there is one thing about that rapid that could go very wrong, is that there's a massive rock in the middle, actually to the side. And if you hit that rock, you'll get stuck. It should suck you under. So you have to go to the left. You have to make a wide left and go through the rapids. It's really easy. It's like a 1, right? For some reason, the raft went to the right. And I don't know if just the people on the left are stronger or paddling faster or what, but for some reason it went to the right and it hit the rock, and my brother went under the water. And so now he's in between the rock and the rapids with thousands of gallons of water just rushing at him. And all of a sudden, my dad reaches in and just pulls him out. And after that, we went on through our day. And at the end, we all reflected on this moment of strength, of listening, of all of this. My dad shouldn't have been able to pull him out of that water. He was stuck. I don't know what the term is. My dad's a water guy. I'm not a water guy. Thousands and thousands. He is a water guy. See, he knows like the strength of the water that's going on. And where he was positioned, he wouldn't have been able to pull him out. And my dad and I both to this day, like, we talk about sometimes the feeling that both of us got when I asked, can you come in my rapid instead of my brother's? And it's something that has stuck with me, that you need to listen to the feelings that you have, and in my case, listen to the Spirit that is telling you promptings. And that one was like an abrupt one. Sometimes it's not as abrupt, but it's telling you that for a reason. And then I think another lesson from that is stay ready. Stay ready to help. If my dad wasn't physically active, if he wasn't someone that works out all the time, strong, in shape, probably would not have been able to pull. And somebody else that went into that boat with my brother probably would not have been able to pull him out. And so listening to your gut feelings, listening to the Spirit has been something that he's instilled with me for a long time. I know it's
sounds like no, I think it's a great story, but it sounds like your thought is, and maybe just to summarize a little bit, is he very easily could have just said, yeah, sure, Taz, I'll jump in with you this time. And, we'll go together today. But he felt really strongly, for whatever reason, that he needed to go back into the raft with your brother.
100%.
So
it would have made sense. Like, hey, you were with him most of the day yesterday. Like, why don't you come into my raft?
Right. Dang, that's a wild experience, man.
Yeah. That's something that stuck with me for a long time.
Were you right there? Like, you were able to see the whole thing?
I saw the whole thing happen. I was literally riding by. They were over there, and we were just riding by because they got stuck. We were right behind them, and then we rode by. And I remember physically saying my brother's name, just yelling, Tanner.
Wow.
It's a scary moment.
Wow. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. So you learned some valuable lessons from your dad. What's your relationship with him like now as you're a dad?
Oh, it's great. It really is. And I say that because my dad, it's funny. He's not necessarily the person that's like giving you advice all the time, or like telling you what to do, or anything like that. Him and I have very similar personalities where we just want to have fun all the time. If you've done some personality tests, I think we did some when we worked together. I'm kind of like the parrot, right? The person who just likes to talk, to have fun. And some other like personality tests, I forget what it's called. I'm a 7, so I'm like the enthusiast, right? So nothing's going wrong at any time. We're all good. We're just having a party. We're here to have fun. And he's pretty similar to that, so we share that.
7 feels high, Taz. I have you about a 4.5.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, if I'm a 4.5, man, like you're
I'm a
like,
strong 3.5.
I was gonna say you're an 8. You just brought yourself down. But I'm a 7. I'm an enthusiast. We're all good all the time. There's no problems. We're good, right? At least that's what my therapist says. But we're very similar in that aspect. So we always have a good time. But my dad is very present with my children too, specifically. And he has a lot of grandkids he's present with. But I think, and I hate to say this maybe on a public channel, but I feel like my relationship with my dad was probably like a lot different than most of my brothers. And I hope that each one of them says that, and they probably do, which is, I think, is another testimony to like how my dad treated each of us individually really well. But my dad specifically spent a lot of time training with me for sports, which I don't think I saw that. I'm the 4th of 5 boys. And so by the time he got to me, there's only 2 kids at home. So he's like, either I just watch TV or go work out, or like, oh, let's just go train. And I think that probably played a role in it. So I apologize for the rest of my brothers who maybe didn't have that all the time. Maybe they did, and I just didn't see it. But like, he spent hours with me in the church gym, shooting shots and making sure I was the best shooter that I could be, helping me dribble. He put me in speed training so that I could be faster. He purchased a college/NFL quarterback coach to train me. Actually, 2 different ones. They were brothers. Thousands and thousands of dollars probably. And so I think that's special that we were just able to spend that extra time together. And then that translated into now. And I think because we had that special relationship, I think he has that special relationship with my children as well, where I feel like my dad and I are very similar in a lot of aspects. And I raised my children probably very similarly to how he raised his children. And so I feel like we have that special bond with our kids. And I'm sure my brothers would say the same thing about their kids, which is great. I'm just talking about from my perspective. And so he was always there. Every time my kids come over, I feel like I don't even see my dad half the time because he just takes them down to the basement and just playing basketball or playing a video game that he doesn't want to play, or like wrestling with them, playing hide and go seek, playing up the makeup games that they play. It's really fun to see that like my dad is just taking on that role. And
Cool.
is amazing. My kids absolutely love going and seeing. We call him Pop. That's his name. So they love going and seeing Pop, and ask all the time. And it's never a drag. They never feel uncomfortable at their house or whatever. They always love going and seeing him.
It's interesting that a large part of your experience with your dad was participating in sports and things like that. And it's been a really important thing for me. I've coached both of my boys in basketball growing up. And it's funny because is it a huge time commitment? Yeah. And there's plenty of reasons not to coach. But I think one of the best reasons to be heavily involved is because when I'm coaching the games, we drive to get there early to the game. And so I have that time with them in the car to talk through things. And then we win or we lose. And then you have that drive home where you talk about, all right, what do you feel like you did well? What could you have done differently, and talking about the pains of losing, and you talk about sportsmanship and all these other things. And I feel like sports is such an incredible teacher. Like it's such an awesome tool that you have as a dad. And it doesn't mean every kid should be in sports. I think there's plenty of kids who probably they want nothing to do with sports. But I do think that is a tool for you to be able to teach the lessons from winning, the lessons from failure, the lessons from not getting as much playing time as you want. All these things, the hard work and dedication and the importance of just becoming exceptional at something if you truly want to compete at the highest level. There's so many lessons involved in sports, and it's really awesome to be able to coach my kids in sports because I get to be heavily involved in the teaching and the discussions around the lessons that come from that. And so it sounds like your dad saw a real similar opportunity with you.
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about how like a lesson that you learned is like you didn't get enough playing time. That was never something for me. So if you were like, if you're projecting on us right now, I apologize that you didn't get enough playing time.
Hey, listen, I'll be the first to admit I was never good enough to see a basketball court in high school anyway. I went to one open gym and I realized, oh no, I'm nowhere near where these guys are. And so I wrestled as a result of that. So I wrestled in high school.
Oh, there you
Got
go.
plenty of playing time in wrestling, but that's because, you're in your own weight class and there was nobody else really good in my weight class. So that was, so by default, I got a lot of playing time, you could say.
Yeah. You probably got pinned a lot too. So
Hurtful, but fair.
Yeah. Jokes aside, that is absolutely true. I just remember hours in the car driving with my dad to sports teams and my mom as well, always in the car. But my mom had other kids to take care of too. So like if we go to a tournament, sometimes she wasn't there. She was taking care of other kids, and that's exactly where she needed to be. But for my dad, we spent hours in the car, and leading up to maybe going to a tournament or a game, he's talking about like, what are the things that we learned this week? What are you working on this week? Remember, keep your elbow, and like all those things, as well as just positive motivation. Like after the games, he'd give me a little bit of criticism, like, hey, maybe work on this, or like your shot seemed flat. I'm just talking about from a basketball perspective, like, hey, your shot seemed flat, right? Or hey, I think you need to be in this position better, more often to make sure you stop the drive on defense, or like those types of criticisms. But they're always really helpful. But one thing my dad never did was complain about a coach giving me more playing time. And my dad personally knew my varsity coach personally. And he never really, he'd always say like, I think you should play more, but he never complained about how the coach never didn't play me more. He always taught me, what should you do to play more? Ask your coach, what do you need to do to play more? And then we'd go and work on that exact same thing later that week, because I know a lot of our players on our teams complained about not playing anymore. And that was something that he just made sure he didn't do. And that instilled in me a lack of victim mentality. Don't be a victim for yourself. There's a reason why you're not playing, and it's not because the coach doesn't like you. I promise that. Promise you that. He doesn't like how you play, probably, right? But that translates over to life, right? Like, people can either complain about their situation, or they can just either make a new situation or go be better at the current situation that they have, and either's fine. But don't make somebody else's problem. Don't make your problem somebody else's problem.
I love that. And I think the other thing is it sounds like your dad did take advantage of some opportunities to turn those moments into teaching moments and things like that. I actually saw a really cool video today, actually, of a dad who was sitting at a restaurant with his boys, and apparently the waiter had been disrespectful to him or something like that. I think the waiter was having a bad day. And the dad actually is teaching his boys. He actually has his son be the one to talk to the manager about the experience that they had, and kind of coaches them through it. He said, "Hey, we're going to be respectful here, but we're going to share what happened." And anyway, the manager talks to the waiter, and the waiter comes over and apologizes for the way that he treated him. He said, "Hey, I hit somebody with my car this morning on the way to work. There's no excuse. I shouldn't have acted that way." And then the dad had the kids be the ones to respond to the waiter and be respectful and forgive him. And they even asked, "Yeah, can I pray for you?" And then they said a little prayer for the waiter, which I just like regardless of how it's being taught, I think as dads, it's easy for us to get sometimes as we're in the throes of daily life to forget that there's so many opportunities to actually teach our kids important principles in every situation. And sometimes we're so focused on getting through it or getting to the end result that we don't slow down and teach. And anyway, I love that you had that experience with your dad. So now let's fast forward even more, because now you're a dad. So walk me through your journey of becoming a father. Obviously, you said you've been married 8 years. Is that right?
Almost, yeah, almost
So
8 years.
so talk me through that journey now that you're a dad.
It hasn't been an easy one, not at all. But I love being a father. I'll kind of start from the beginning, I guess. And I kind of told you this when we talked on the phone. My wife and I, we got married, and then 6 months in, we're like, should we have kids? And I think that both comes from a love of children from both of us. I grew up in a big family, and then post high school, I worked in a daycare for a few months, taking care of kids, and that was like when. And actually, it's funny. Most of my older brothers did as well. We all worked at the same daycare at different points.
Interesting.
Yeah. We had a great role model. His name was Mick Mel in our church. We'll at him on this, but he was a great role model for our family, and he owned a daycare, and we just wanted to be there with him and work for him. So we all worked there for a little bit, some longer than others. And then my wife actually grew up where her mom owned a daycare in her house growing up. And so being around kids, I guess, didn't dissuade us from having kids. It actually did the opposite. And so 6 months in, we knew our love of kids, and we're like, should we do this? And again, that was a prompting. That was like a feeling that my wife and I had, like, hey, should we do this? And we go, man, we're only 6 months in. Like, I don't, we want to have that honeymoon phase. Let's go travel a little bit. Like, we're making some, we both work. We have a little extra cash. Let's go do that. And we both said, hey, let's pray about it. And so we did. For the next week individually. We both prayed about that. And we came back and we said, yeah, like, let's have kids. Let's do it. And so by month 10 in our relationship, in our marriage, we were pregnant with our first one. And that brought on its challenges of itself. 3 months in, my wife started bleeding profusely, and was on bed rest. And when I was, if you asked me like 6, 7, 8 years ago, like if someone was bleeding during pregnancy, it's like, oh, it's done, right? That's what happens. But my wife was just on bed rest for 6 weeks. In order to heal what was going on inside of her. It had nothing to do with the baby or anything, but heal what happened. And nothing physically happened. It's just her body had something, an issue wrong with it. And after those 6 weeks, we were in the hospital. She'd had multiple blood transfusions, multiple doctor's visits, going to specialists, seeing what's happening. And just after 20 weeks of being pregnant, we had a stillborn. So, and I know a lot of people always ask me like, oh, was he full term? Was he full term? He wasn't full term, and he was only half, but we were so close to the point of viability. We were pushing for so long for that. We were hoping for just a few more weeks where that baby could live, where he could go to the NICU for the first probably 4 months of his life and live. And it's kind of your first child. You're so excited. Every little thing is great. You look at the apps that they have, like, oh, he's the size of a lemon, or like, oh, he's the size of like a blueberry today or this week, right? And you were reading about it. Oh, like he's developing his heart, he's developing his lungs, or whatever it is, right? And we're so excited. Every day is so fun. Every day is a new challenge. And then that 6 weeks to kind of have that like all blow up. And the only thing you're really hoping for is that, like, can we get this baby here? And in the back of your mind, are we gonna have future babies come here too, or is this going to be an issue every single time? I would say that we saw the hand of God in those 6 weeks, in the weeks afterwards, in the months afterwards, and in the years afterwards. Because if we didn't have that experience and amazing doctors or whatever, Kirsten actually had to have a surgery afterwards that we figured out what was going on. And after that, we had the next pregnancy we have our now 5-year-old, Taysom.
Your 5-year-old's named Taysom?
Yes.
That's awesome. BYU fans will appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
So that's a tough thing to go through, Taz, for anybody, but especially a young couple, recently married, not necessarily, still navigating their relationship in a lot of ways too. So how did that impact your relationship with your wife?
I knew you were going to ask that question. That's a long question to answer, but I think to give kind of a summary of that, how do I explain this? Not well. And I say that retroactively because after that, for the first few weeks, you're kind of showered with gifts and attention, right? Your wife and you and your wife are in this together, right? You're crying on each other's shoulders. You're just sad, and that part was great. Looking back for our relationship, not that it was a great experience.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But looking back, like that was a good time. But after that was kind of after the attention faded, that's where it was really difficult. And I think it is for a lot of men, because you start to put on the mask. You start to hide your emotions and your feelings. You feel like you should be in a better point than you are. And then you kind of just stop thinking about it. And every time you think about it, you just push it down. And you push it deeper, you push it farther. But what doesn't happen is your wife's probably more open with her feelings, right? She's probably talking about it constantly. My wife talked about it probably every conversation, and I think it was an unhealthy way for her to deal with it as well, and that's a whole different thing. But when you're not talking about a situation and your wife is, and she wants that attention, and you're like, I don't want that attention anymore, you essentially start to go like this. And if you're listening to this, you're just essentially pulling yourselves away from each other in a lot of aspects. Now you're still physically present. You probably still have great times. You still go on dates. You're still happy, but there's that part of you that starts to pull yourself away little by little. And what I've learned, especially looking back, is that those things can compound if not dealt with. And sometimes you feel like, I dealt with it. I cried about it. I thought about it. Like, I'm good, right? But something like that is an opportunity that doesn't come around very often in your life. Hopefully no one has to go through that. But it actually really does need some professional help and some outside help. And I did not seek any of that. And I think a lot of the issues that arose was actually from me not being able to deal with that. And then that habit continues to compound on your life and on your marriage, on your mind, and your relationship. And it causes that separation. It continues to cause resentment in your life. And those are your choices as a man. And the resentment that build up from just smaller things continues to build, and it compounds unless dealt with. Unless you take off that mask, you can't really have the relationship with your wife that you really want to. And so it heavily affected our relationship, but it creeped in little by little over the next, I would probably say up until a few months ago when I went on the retreat and kind of learned for myself what the heck was going on in my life. It really affected us till then. And you can think we've been married for 7.5 years, and that happened a year in. I mean, you can think the last 6 years were pretty tough for us from that retroactively. But at the same time, you're in it and you think, I asked my wife like 2 days ago, she's like, man, I thought I had it great. I thought I had the perfect marriage, right? And then you look back and you're like, wait, we didn't. But now is where I really love. Anyway, kind of rambling now, but.
No, I think it's good. I think there's a lot of people who go through the pains of loss and things like that. And I think very few people handle it the right way. I don't know that there is a right way. You know what I mean? I think everybody can. I think it's very easy for people to get into a dark place. And you talk about putting the mask on. I think my question is how on earth do you take the mask off then?
That's a good question. I will have to say it's very difficult to take the mask off. It's hard, but it gets easier. So here's I'll kind of tell you guys my experience with that, with taking the mask off. We went on this retreat. We did some soul searching essentially. And I don't think it takes going on a retreat to have to do some soul searching, but it was very helpful for me. And now I have as kind of a support system built in place. I have probably a handful of men now that like I talk to at least weekly about the situations that I'm going through personally. And I'll kind of keep those to myself, but that I can reach out to and have follow-ups with, check-ins with, how are we doing, stuff like that. I think taking the mask off is one, just recognizing that there's probably an issue. So this situation, probably grief that wasn't dealt with, and then you're essentially hiding those emotions from your wife and not telling her what's going on in your mind and in your heart. Or if you have other situations, right? Like, you have a lot of struggles at work and you're not opening up to your wife about it. You have struggles with family members and you don't really like to talk about it. You have issues with, church or kids or, pornography, like all those things. Like there is hundreds of issues that you could probably have in your life. And if we're not openly talking about it with our wife, probably pretty consistently, I would say at least on a weekly basis, and just telling your thought process and walking through things. I think the first part is just opening up to what the issue is that you're having, being vulnerable enough to say that you probably have an issue that is hurting your life, and then being able to talk about it consistently enough where then and I think this is the keyest point, that's not even a word, but the most key point is that whatever's going on in your life, try to find what is stopping you from having like that connection with your wife. And that's the issue you need to handle. And until that connection comes back in, you're holding a mask.
It sounds like one of the main things I hate to put words in your mouth here, but it sounds like one of the main things that you wish you had done differently, because you definitely said it took you a long time, up until a few months ago, to take the mask off. Sounds like you wish you would have communicated much more openly with your wife along the way. And so maybe looking back, now that you're on the other side of it, like there's plenty of people going through similar stuff. What would you tell them? Like, how can they speed up the process so it doesn't take them 6-7 years?
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I said it earlier and I was like, wait, do I do that? And a little caveat to that before is like, we're probably all wearing small little masks too. And I think like sharing every thought, every jot and tittle, like, there's always things that we're going to be dealing with smallly on our own. Like our significant other isn't going to know every single thought that goes into our mind. Right. But like, or a problem that we're dealing with, like, oh man, I got to deal with Seth on this podcast. Like, she's not going to know about that. Right. But like those bigger things are the things that really keep us. And sometimes they can be small and turn into bigger things. And so I would just try to keep open communication. I think that looking back at my situation, one thing that I found was like really frustrating is that like I just didn't want to talk about it anymore. And she needed that.
Yeah.
And what I did wasn't healthy. It was like I kind of just listened, but I listened resentfully. Because I didn't like having to talk about it. And I could, looking back, I could feel it. I could feel the annoyance.
Which I imagine you probably weren't as present in the conversation either as a result of that, because you're not saying your piece. You're just like, okay, say your piece so we can get it over with, it sounds like.
No, 100%. Yeah, you're almost like, can you please hurry this up?
I tell you what, Taz, it is a hard balance as a husband and as a father, right? Like I lost my job in May. And so I have had a doozy of a few months trying to figure out what to do professionally, worried about being able to support my family and everything like that. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's been tough. And it's the main thing on my mind. Like every day, it's the main thing on my mind. Like, what am I going to do to be able to provide for my family? And one of the things that I felt is if I talk too much about it with my wife, then I'm the source of her stress too. Like I have to be able to be positive and say, hey, it's going to work out. And I, by the way, for the record, accepted an offer this week. Pretty excited to get started.
Hey, let's
That's
go.
besides the point.
You didn't even tell me that. Hey.
Yeah. So it's a fresh thing, but I felt like I had to be like, hey, it's going to work out.
Yeah.
We're going to be okay. I'm confident. I had to exude confidence because the times where I would be a little vulnerable and be like, oh man, I can't believe that the things that I thought would work out haven't worked out yet and things like that. And then she starts to kind of go down the path of like, well, maybe it's not going to work out. Maybe we need to make some drastic changes and things like that. And so it's a hard balance to walk between being vulnerable and opening up and saying, yeah, like I'm scared, and at the same time being like, well, my family needs me to be strong. And I don't know the perfect way to navigate that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. And I think it just takes communication. And maybe I can share an experience. My wife actually said something to me yesterday about that exact topic, because it is tough. And we'll kind of maybe use your example of like losing a job. Like you walk a fine line, and you said that earlier. You walk a fine line between reassuring your wife that like things are going to be okay, so she doesn't go down through that spiral and be like, shoot, do I have to find a job? Do we need to sell our house?
Right.
Do we sell our cars? Do I need to sell my guns? Do I, like whatever it is to make money, right? Not that my guns are worth very much, but but like it's a source of income, right? And then the other side of the line is like, you want to be able to like share what's on your mind with your wife, right? Because that helps you just think through those things so that you don't spiral, right? Because if you don't have an outlet for yourself, then you're starting to spiral. All you're doing is you're just going through this remuneration in your mind of your own problems, and they stay there. But once you're able, that's why therapy sometimes is really helpful. You actually have somebody to like talk to, but like you don't love that person across from you, right? It's helpful in some ways where like you don't have to share all of your burdens all the time with your wife, but like, and then you can think things from like a psychological standpoint, what's going on, but you're trying to walk that fine line. My wife said something the other day that was like hugely profound to me. And maybe like, I'll probably butcher this like a lot, but she essentially said like, I want to get to the point where your emotions and what you're saying to me and like the issues that you have are totally mutually exclusive. And I don't think she used that word, so I'm more a profound word right here. But essentially, mutually exclusive from my feelings. So your
unpack that for me.
Essentially, what she's saying is that like your feelings and what you're going through right now don't totally affect my feelings in the moment. Right? Because I think there's that slight, like maybe codependency. Maybe that's not the right word, but like you're kind of codependent on the others. Like if I'm sad, she's sad, right? If I'm mad, she's mad. You know
Well,
what
it
I mean?
sounds like where she's trying to get to is the fact that, like, if you're so worried about how what's on your mind is going to impact her, then you're kind of policing your own
Exactly
communication to her,
yeah, totally.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like she's trying to get to the, yeah, exactly. She's trying to get to the point to where you can be perfectly open and you don't have to worry about, is she going to be okay hearing this?
Exactly.
Interesting.
Right. And you think back to my situation, why would I want to add any more stress onto her talking about my feelings when I know every conversation we're having is about that already?
Yeah.
Right. And what she's going through. Why would I want to do that? Right. And if I bring up my feelings, now she's sad again too. And I just brought her to that same point that I already didn't even like in the first place. Why would I do that?
Exactly. So Taz, let me ask you this then, because you guys go through this extremely difficult loss and obviously had a lasting impact. And of course it will, right? Like it's never going to not impact you, but somehow you guys have to make the decision to have more kids and pursue fatherhood and things like that, despite the pain that you feel from this loss. And so how do you guys work through that portion of it?
Honestly, that was an easy choice for us because, and maybe not the healthiest thing, but like both of us felt like maybe if we can have another kid, it would kind of fill the void that we're having, fill the void of this emptiness that we have. And so that was our decision there, was like, we've wanted kids. Let's just keep going. Hopefully this can fill some sort of void for us so we don't feel like this all the time. And I can tell you that like that was healthy in some ways. Yes, we're trudging on, we're keep on going. But what happens is that like new problems just arise, right? And where we didn't deal with the problems that we had before, when we get into a new pregnancy here, all we are is just worried about what's happened before and is that going to happen again? Right? And we're just constantly worried about it, especially my wife. Right? She's actually in it. Like she's actually pregnant. She doesn't want to go through that again, right? I don't either, but I'm pushing that down, right? And I'm just trying to be supportive of her. And I don't want to talk about it anymore, right? But then we're going through that. And then we have the kid, and it's just problems always compound. So now we have our now 5-year-old. We're worried about SIDS. We're worried about infections. We're worried about, is he eating enough? He was colicky. So like, is he even getting enough? He's constantly crying. Are we bad parents? Like those things just end up compounding. And if we don't deal with the first thing, then you never go back to that. We're always just kind of living in this state of problems and resentment and not talking about it, or talking about it too much. And we're never on the same page. And then we were pregnant again, and we had a miscarriage, actually. And then those problems arise, and all the same feelings come back from last time. And then we got pregnant again, and now we have a 2.5-year-old. Like those problems arise, and now we have 2 kids. Then we get pregnant again, and then we have our 3rd kid, and it just compounds, and all the problems just start to come down. And from my end, the resentment was the hardest part to. I don't want to talk about my feelings. Why are you talking about them so much? And
so the resentment of the continued communication about the pain that you're feeling when you don't want to go there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to talk about the problem. And part of it is my personality. I don't want to talk about the problems. Like I'm a happy guy. Let's just be positive. Why can't you just be positive? Why can't you just look at this from a positive standpoint? Right? But that's not how her mind works. And so the communication from me was lack, right? Communication from her was like, I want to talk about this every second. And none of us were like sitting down and being like, let's talk about this in a healthy way for me and for you. in order to work through this. Mm-hmm. Let me talk about my feelings. Let me talk about yours. Let's get through this together.
So Taz, you're in a position now. I mean, with your oldest being 5 years old, the world is your oyster right now as a dad. I mean, you've got. I guess my point in saying this is, we're never going to be finished products as fathers or as husbands. You're going to have stuff. You're being very vulnerable and being willing to admit, like, yeah, I haven't been perfect as a husband or as a father, and these are the things that I've struggled with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got a great opportunity to map out how the rest of your fatherhood journey is going to go. And so I'm curious, what are the main things that you're hoping to teach your kids? And what are you being deliberate about as now you raise your young kids?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I feel like I think that you're always mapping that out. And so when you say, like, what are you mapping out? I'm like, man, what I'm mapping out right now is probably way different from when my 5-year-old's now 10, Mm-hmm. But right now, what I'm mapping out is the basis of honesty and communication. Because 5-year-olds can get caught up in, I didn't take the cookie. It wasn't me,
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm just trying to instill in them, it's okay if you took the cookie. I don't care about the cookie. I just want to know, are you going to tell me the truth when I ask you? Because you think in my situation, like, that's not the case. And in all honesty, like, it's a form of dishonesty. Right. And so, like, I look back and I say, you know what? I had a real problem just being completely honest with my wife about where I was. Right. Of omitting what's going on in, my feelings. Mm-hmm. And that's what led us to a lot of problems. And so I'm trying to instill in them, like, I don't care if you took the freaking cookie, right? It's that kind of, like, just dispersing yourself from the emotions. I don't care about the cookie. Just talk to me, right? It's not going to affect me anymore, right? And then, so honesty, and then just being able to communicate what's going on. And so I spend a lot of my time with my kids. I'm not one of those, like, tell me your feelings dads, right? But I want every day when it's so funny because, like, sometimes I'll forget to do this, but every night when I lay down with my kids, and it's so funny because they both lay in the same bed. Like, we have a queen bed. My 5-year-old has a bunk bed, but he doesn't sleep there. Because I'm laying down with my 2.5-year-old, he just wants to be there too. So I have them side by side. I'm in the middle every single night. That is the highlight of my day. And I always ask, what are you grateful for? What's one thing you're grateful for? What was your favorite part of today? And then let's say a prayer. And those are the 3 things. And sometimes I'll forget. And they're like, Dad, like, you forgot to ask what we're grateful for. What was my favorite thing for today? And I just want to start that communication, because I think if it starts there, it's going to happen in other places too. So that when they come to me and, like, someone was they have that problem at the school ground where there was a bully, right? And their feelings are hurt. Or, like, some girl said something to them in class, or they get their heart broken when they're 17, or they don't want to, whatever it is, like, they can come to me with that.
I think you will really, down the road, you will really appreciate the way you prioritized the idea of teaching open communication. That was something that my dad was always really good at. My dad's a professor in college, and so he communicated for a living. He was a professor in communications and journalism and things like that. And, I have a twin brother, that. Yeah, and there were times we would be at each other's throats, man. And my dad would have to stay up till like 1 a.m. refereeing and helping us kind of talk through and understand, conflict resolution and things like that. And, man, I tell you what, I think back to that, and I'm sure that was such a grind for my dad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there were times where he just wanted to be like, shut up and go to bed, Yeah. But he took the time to do it. And it's funny because I definitely learned from that. And that's something that I've tried to instill in my kids is open communication and the importance of, like, not just bottling up, frustrations and things like that, but actually communicating about that. And that's okay. Like, even though it might be an uncomfortable conversation, it's a conversation you should have. And it's funny because my oldest son is 19. He's working as an electrical apprentice, and he's doing awesome. But he shared an experience with me a while back where I got home from work and he's like, Dad, I got to tell you something. And he's like, hey, I was at work and my boss he had some coworkers who communicated well and some coworkers who may not have communicated as well. And he said, my boss basically came up to me and said, I'm going to butcher the story, but he basically said something along the lines of, well, yeah, I know where you stand because you're actually good at communicating it. And so my son actually said, hey, Dad, thank you so much for teaching me the importance of communication because it's really helped me stand out at work. And I tell you what, man, like you want to talk about moments as a dad that just freaking fire you up. It's like, wow, it actually worked. Like something that I did had an impact, and you're able to see that impact. And you know what? It's not always going to be that way. You're not always going to be able to see the fruits of your labors, but at the same time, like they're taking these things and slowly but surely implementing them and listening to them and making that a part of who they are.
Yep.
Which, what a huge blessing it is for us to be able to have that kind of impact on people.
Yeah. And I've seen that from you, actually. I know what I'm going to get from Seth Stoker is the truth and kind of, bluntness. And that's fine. If you don't agree with something, I know Seth's going to tell me that. And I appreciate that.
And that's okay, right? Like we can disagree. It's not rude to disagree as long as you do it in a respectful way, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's been a problem for me where I like to save face. I have historically been a people pleaser, right? And I kind of hate friction, which is funny as a salesperson because like you need friction to be, to do well in sales.
Oh, yeah.
I've done fairly well. I feel like I'm good at it in the sales process, but not in a relationship sometimes. So I have an issue with that. That's something I'm working on. And just being just opening up, having that communication, taking off the mask. It's okay. It's fun. And when you do, that communication comes.
Mm-hmm.
That connection comes. That connection comes with my wife, and it's amazing.
Because you're actually being authentic. You're being genuine rather than hiding something. And there's something about that authenticity or sincerity, even if it forces you to be vulnerable, that actually draws people closer to you.
100%. And I can say with conviction that if the wife you have is the wife you love, and that you want to be with, you guys have a good relationship in some sort of capacity, maybe not in every aspect, but like you being vulnerable with something, she's not going to leave you for it. She's not going to be mad more than an hour, maybe if it's something really, you should have told her. Or for a couple of days. Like she's going to love you through it. And ultimately it will bring you, even though it might be hard for a little bit, to hear some things, telling my wife that I was resentful of her for 6 years in some sort of fashion. That was a hard conversation.
The irony is that the hiding of those feelings from her probably feels like much more of a betrayal than actually having those feelings. Like if you were just able to communicate about those things. And so it's counterintuitive. It doesn't feel like that's going to be the case in the moment.
Yeah.
But what a cool lesson that you've learned, and frankly, pretty early in your marriage and in your journey together that you've been able to learn that. Of course, it doesn't seem like it in the moment, man. But I tell you what, when you look back and you've been married for 30 years, you're like, oh man, we've been good at this for so long now, know? Yeah. So it's all about perspective too. But I try to ask everybody who comes on the podcast this, but I'm curious, if we fast forward years and years, what do you hope your legacy is? Like if your kids are asked, hey, what was Taz like as a father? What do you hope they say?
I thought about this question earlier, actually. And one thing that sticks out to me with some kid, I'll get to the answer in here in a second. Here's a little story, a caveat to that. One thing I hear like parents say all the time is that you shouldn't be your kid's best friends. And because you got to be a parent, you got to be you got to be a dad, you got to be a father figure, you have to be a leader, right? And but when I look back or I look forward in 20 years, when my kid's 25, right? Probably getting married-ish, right? Graduating college, whatever. And he starts to have kids, like we're just the same. And I want my kid to be my best friend at that point. And so when I think of somebody that is someone's best friend, like my best friend would tell me when I'm doing something wrong. My best friend would correct me when I'm doing something wrong. My best friend is going to praise me when I'm doing something right. My friend's going to teach me the lesson if he's already learned it. And I think it's a little bit different from like someone that's your same age. And so I'm not saying it's completely the same. But what I want my kid to say in 30 years when he has 3 kids that are 5, 2.5, and 4 months is that like my dad's my best friend.
Why?
And he taught me a lot. I can go to him when I have an issue. I get praise from him. I can talk about the moments and the memories that we've had for years before this. And we can have so much fun together. And I know my dad's going to shoot me straight, and he can shoot me straight, and I can shoot him straight too. And we can overcome an issue if we have to. But I want him to say that like my dad's one of my best friends. So that's the legacy I want.
I think the cool thing about that is in the moment, there's certain things that you're going to have to do as they're growing up that they don't like, right?
Yeah.
You talked about it, like telling them they're wrong or giving them feedback of how they can be better and things like that. And in the moment, you're not going to feel like their best friend.
Yeah.
But actually what you're doing is laying a foundation of respect that they're going to be able to look back and say, Dad taught me this. Dad taught me this, even if I didn't understand why back then. And the result of that, I know for me with my dad, like if I've got something I need to counsel about or something that I need advice on, my dad's the guy I call because he's done that for me my whole life. You know what I mean? And once again, like I think you're spot on with, I think you'll know the impact that you had by how willing or interested they are in involving you in their lives.
Yeah.
And, you being their best friend means that you've been somebody that they've wanted close to them in their life, even after they're out of the house and everything like that. What more could you ask for as a dad? I think that's awesome.
100%. Even if I can still dunk on them, they're still going to be my best friend,
Just be glad you can say still dunk. See, I never got to experience what the dunk felt like. And so, well, you lower the rim.
8 foot
Yeah,
rim.
on 8 foot, I've experienced it, but I bet it feels really cool. I bet it feels different at 10 feet.
Totally does. Yep. I dunked like a couple weeks ago. It was great.
I might need to see evidence of that.
I don't know if there is evidence. I mean, there's people's testimonies and definitely true testimonies.
How convenient.
Yeah, but it wasn't in a game. I've only dunked one time ever in a game.
Really?
I'm like not the most athletic person, so.
Well, Taz, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been really great to learn from you. Obviously, it hasn't all been rainbows and butterflies, but at the same time, you've learned some valuable lessons that I think other people are going to be able to take away and implement in their own lives. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome. And if anybody's listening, reach out to me. Love to chat through situations that you have been in. I have a brotherhood that I'm part of that we do the same thing every single time, every single day, every week. And so I'm definitely open to working with you on things that you think are having a hard time with, that you don't want to talk to your wife about, that you don't want to open up about, like open up to me about it and I can help you. So appreciate your time, Seth. This was awesome. Thanks for letting me share my story.
Thank you, Taz.
Sounds good, man. See ya.
Taz, thank you for being willing to have that conversation. Most men never do. Now, here's what I want to leave you with. The mask that Taz talked about today, it doesn't just cost you. It costs your wife. It costs your kids. It costs the people who love you most and need you the most. Taking it off might be one of the hardest things a man can do. But based on everything Taz shared today, I think it's also one of the most important things that you can do. If you're carrying something that you haven't dealt with, you know what it is. I hope today gave you a reason to start. New episodes are going to drop every Wednesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with one man who needs to hear it. And if you know a dad with a story worth telling, go to dadicalpodcast.com and let me know about him. And as always, don't sleepwalk through fatherhood. Be dadical.